Bundy to justice, if he hadn't escaped from Colorado, things would have gone differently. Of course, but Mr. Yoakum did an important service for you guys. Anyway, can I answer any questions? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, the question is, he was one. Are not off. I think, it's the evidence that was presented in that courtroom, and I've talked at length with Larry Simpson, and he doesn't disagree with me. The evidence against Bundy was actually, because Bundy was such a master at not leaving evidence behind, there was very circumstantial evidence against him, and that bite mark evidence, that was the first time bite mark evidence was ever used in a court of law. And it's my understanding that bite mark evidence has been debunked since then and is considered junk science. And so I would say that if this case was brought to trial with that evidence today, he might have been found not guilty. On the other hand, the state of forensic evidence was so primitive back then compared to now. For example, no DNA evidence. If the case was brought today, I think other evidence would have been, would have convicted him. So it's a little misleading to say if the trial was brought today, but if that evidence was brought into a 2019 courtroom, I think he wouldn't have been convicted. So there's a good chance he would have been convicted. Yes?
Very well done.
Thank you.
The costumes, the visuals, the art style is just unbelievable.
Oh, cool.
The music,
Yeah. Thank you. Well, right. I'm glad you mentioned the look of the film because the way we achieved a very period look, some movies, when they're set in the 70s, they become an advertisement for the 70s, like everybody has polka dot bell bottoms, and so like I was 12 in the 70s, but I wore Levi 501 jeans then and now, although I'm not wearing them now, but and so I told each department, everything has to look real, but let's not overdo it. And the way the cinematographer is a guy named Brandon Trost, who did a fabulous job, and the way we achieved the look was we shot the movie with these vintage anamorphic lenses, which have imperfections in them. Like sometimes you'll see a blue flare going through the shot, but that's an affect of these vintage lenses that were kind of detuned, which means we actually, before you do a shoot, the camera assistant goes through all the lenses and makes them perfect, and the place you rent them from makes them perfect. We actually made them less than perfect, so that it gives it a very filmic, grainy look. But it still, I think, looks beautiful, but it looked very, so I wanted to achieve a period feel, not by overdoing the costumes, but by actually how we lensed the film, and we did it handheld, and so anyway. But what was the other part of the question? Sorry.
What inspired you to do it from this perspective?
Well, there have been many things about Bundy. So for me, what was interesting was taking it from the perspective of the victim. And some people have been confused. Well, it's not her POV because we were with Bundy in all sorts of other places where she wasn't. So it's not really her POV, but it's really, I want to give the audience the same experience that people who believed Bundy had. Because, I have spent a lot of time doing wrongful conviction work. I helped get the West Memphis 3 out of prison with Paradise Lost, and I did a series on, there's a guy named Richard Glossop on Oklahoma's death row, who the state has tried to kill 3 times, who I think is totally innocent. I did a show on Discovery about that. I've spent a lot of time talking to people who claim to be innocent, and there's always this moment when I'm in the early phases where I'm looking at somebody and having to evaluate their credibility. And sometimes I go back to my hotel room and I not quite have a panic attack, but it's like, how do I believe this person before I start this project? And of course, by the time something comes out, like with the West Memphis 3, I've done the investigation. So I'm not saying anything I've ever done, actually put out in the world, I have any doubts about my conviction that these people are innocent, but there is that moment where, is he snowing me or not? And so this script allowed me to tap into that feeling and turn it on its head, because a wrongful conviction is obviously somebody who's innocent, but everyone around them thinks they're guilty. And so I thought it'd be interesting to look at the opposite, where somebody who is obviously guilty of the worst things you could ever do to somebody, you know, but everyone thinks he's innocent because he's white, good looking, you know, and I just thought that would be an interesting perspective for a deeper reason, not just to play with some idea that in my own experience, but I think Bundy shatters everyone's stereotype of what a serial killer should be. We want to think, as Bundy at the end of the movie says, you know, killers don't come out of the shadows with long teeth and blood dripping off their chin. We want to think that people who do evil are in some far corner of the human experience, and that means they're easily recognizable and therefore easily avoidable, and just the opposite is true in my experience. Covering crime, and just as a human being, the people who do the worst are often those you least expect, whether it's a priest who commits pedophilia and holds mass the next day, that's compartmentalized sociopathic behavior. Frankly, whether it's a corporate CEO of a polluting, I don't want to get into a political debate, but you know, a corporate CEO of a polluting corporation that goes to bed at night knowing they're suppressing climate change research and people are dying, or the pharmaceutical companies that you know, promoted opioids knowing that they were addictive and telling their sales reps to sell. You know, I don't know how those people go to bed at night because they're killing people. You know, more people died of opioid addiction each year than in the entire Vietnam War on an annual basis. So for me, Bundy is like the guy, it's a lesson you can't learn enough. I have daughters who are of the age of Bundy's victims, and it's a lesson for them, and it's a lesson for everybody. You know, people need to earn your trust. And I think we're endlessly fascinated with this guy because all of his friends are all around him and people who knew him, and he manipulated his way in the trial to even be the lead counsel. That's unheard of in the annals of American legal history. I mean, so the way into the script allowed me to give the audience, because when he's jumping out that window, I'm hoping that you're so invested in that relationship that even though intellectually you know it's Bundy, that you're almost kind of rooting for him at that point in the movie, but by the time he reveals himself to Liz when he writes Hacksaw, I hope people kind of feel revolted and like, oh God, I was actually liking him for the first part. That's my way of portraying what a psychopath is and how you have to try to avoid that. So, and that's where I think there's been a little confusion that I'm glorifying him because he's likable. I'm not glorifying him because he's likable. I'm glorifying him because he got away. Sorry, oh, sorry. Don't put that on social media. I'm showing him as likable because that was his stock in trade that allowed him to do such horrible things, and we need to be forewarned about that, you know, in our daily lives. Yes.
Yeah, I thought this was a really different role for Zac Efron. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you got to him or how he got interested in the project.
Yeah, this movie came together with lightning speed in a way that never happens. And it's also, some of you may know that I also did this Netflix documentary corporate series, which is also about Bundy. So it's just this weird thing that I've done two Bundy things basically simultaneously, all coming out now. And the doc series was already happening. These tapes landed on my desk, and the author, Stephen Michaud, who wrote a book called Conversations with a Killer, asked me, like 2 decades ago, but he found the tapes and he said, do you think there'd be a series here? So I listened to the tapes and I thought that would be fascinating and it'd be an interesting kind of exploration of, you know, the mind, you know, like entering into the mind of the killer to tell his story in a fresh way. And I was doing that documentary already, and in April of 2017, I live in New York, but I was in Los Angeles having a meeting with my motion picture agent at Creative Artists, because I haven't done a movie in a really long time. My last movie was not very good, 20 years ago, Blair Witch 2. So 2 decades later, I decided to take another run at making a movie, and I was explaining to my agent, how exciting this Bundy story is, and not even pitching him or not even thinking I would do a Bundy movie, but that because I have been doing so much crime lately, maybe we should focus on that space. And a light bulb went off in his head, and he said, well, here, there's a script on the Hollywood Blacklist that's about Bundy. If you don't know what the Hollywood Blacklist is, it's a listing of scripts that over the years people really like. This script won an Academy Nichols Prize. And the Hollywood Blacklist are scripts that are out there that Hollywood producers have tried to make, or executives like, but for some reason or other they've had trouble making the film. And so he said, well, there's a script about Bundy, now that you're thinking about it, that you might find interesting. And movies, under the best of circumstances, take years to set up, especially independent movies, especially a Hollywood Blacklist script, because that means people have tried and failed before. So I read the script on the plane home and was utterly fascinated and told my agent, yeah, let's take a run. But I thought that was going to be the first baby step of a zillion that has to happen. But the next week, my agent was at a weekly meeting of agents, and they all talk about what their clients are doing. And so my agent, Michael Cooper, said, hey, Berlinger's doing this Bundy script. And Zac Efron's agent, because we're both represented at CAA, Zac Efron's agent said, hey, Zac is looking to do something different. And, do you want him to read it? Now, the way that the business works is, it's not just a light decision to have an actor at that level read a script, because if he says yes, you're obligated. It's called a reading offer. So if somebody like Zac Efron or Matthew McConaughey or you name the A-list star, if you send them the script to read, you're obligated to have them do the movie if they say yes. So I had to decide, do I really want Zac? It was actually a pretty quick decision, because I think he has shown in different roles a really nice range, but he hasn't really been given an opportunity to really, do something serious. And also, he was, we had a phone conversation, and he was willing to kind of poke a hole in the teen heartthrob image that he has for a certain segment of the population. And I, as a documentarian, thought that would be, that gave me a little bit of reality that I could bring in and make me feel comfortable that I'm kind of playing with his real life persona as this, person who's very attractive to a lot of women. But I certainly wouldn't do that if I didn't think he had the chops to do it. And so he read it, loved it, and signed on. And so a script that I didn't even know existed, I read it mid-April. Zac signed on beginning of May. Because he signed on, the producers took the movie to Cannes. Cannes is not just a place to show movies, it's where most movies that haven't been made get financed. That's where you go to make deals. And within a month of me having read the script for the first time, all of a sudden I had a greenlit movie with Zac Efron, which is astounding. It never happens that way. So I was in the middle of doing the doc, and that's why, the doc series, that's why both of these things have come out at the same time. So anyway, that's the story.
2 more questions. Yes.
What about the rest of the cast? How did you get such a diverse cast?
I get everyone who's in this cast were my first choice, and I just went out to these people, and somehow everyone just thought this was a cool project. I mean, even James, I don't know if you noticed that Bob Hayward is played by an officer who pulls him over in Utah, and is played by James Hetfield of Metallica, who's never been in a movie before, but I had made a film called Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, and we were friends, and I always felt like James just has this presence that could be exploited in cinema, that he could play a role. And Lily Collins was my first choice. I had seen her in some other stuff that I was great to the bone, and I met her at a screening of that, and
I was thinking
we
that
kind of
might.
connected, and so I said,
Can I point you out?
she liked it. Angela Serafian, I made a documentary called Intent to Destroy, which is about the Armenian genocide, and the way we made that documentary was we went behind the scenes of this movie called The Promise, which she was the star of, and so we had been friendly. To my great delight, John Malkovich said yes. I still can't believe it. And people say, well, how did you direct John Malkovich? Well, you just let John Malkovich do his thing. You're really happy he's there, and whatever you want, John. That's how I directed John Malkovich. And Haley Joel, you know, I thought would be really cool for this part. He said yes. I mean, it's just something about this film. Just, you know, it's interesting that it's getting a little backlash or whatever, and people are divided over the film. When the film was actually being shot, we had it wasn't a big budget. It was shot in northern Kentucky in the dead of winter for a story that takes place in Utah, Colorado, Miami, and Seattle, Pacific Northwest. Originally, we were going to shoot it in Vancouver. At the last minute, for reasons too boring to explain, we shifted to Kentucky. So the shoot was really hard. It was not a long shoot. It was 28 days. But for some, you know, it's just the way the movie got financed in 4 weeks. Every actor I asked to be in it agreed to be in it. And you know, I'm a documentarian. I actually have a bad track record as a feature film. So the fact that everyone said yes, and the fact that the shoot should have been gone a lot worse than it did, but every time the camera rolled, it was just wow, that was amazing. I don't know, it was meant to be, I guess you could say. All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Right.
Okay, make it a good one. Yes. Why am I in the film? Because I'm a main. I mean, actually, the actor we cast for that role fell out.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, what a perfect thing for me to do, because I have spent 20 years interviewing people on death row and doing crime stuff. So if there was a role that I could put myself in, it would be me. Now, my daughter is the girl in the library who flirts with Zach. That's a funny story, I will tell you, because my daughter, she's a lovely girl, but sometimes she blurts things out and they sound meaner than they are. And she was never really interested in my documentaries. When she was about 11, now she's 20. When she was about 11, from about 5 to today, is Zac Efron. She had Zac Efron posters, not anyone but Zac, on her wall. And so I called her up, at college, and I said, I'm finally doing another movie. Oh, great. I'm legit, Maya. Oh, great. It's starring Zac Efron. And then I invited her, and she's a that's my other daughter. She's a material science, and really smart science person, and has no interest in the arts. But when I said, you want to be in a scene with Zac and flirt with him? And now I'm the greatest dad that ever existed.
Well, I was going to.
Thank you for having your balance ready as you went.
Oh, they pointed out. Yoko.
They did point out. Yeah, I was thinking it'd actually be fun to. You what? Oh, he's sweating out here.
That was an interesting time for you. Here, Lauren.
Yeah, I'm coming out. Like my arms are.
I know.
We got David Yoakum and Joe Berlinger.
Your ballots?
Oh, yeah.
Go my camera. All right, it's a better camera. It's the 10. It's the whole reason I bought the 10 was for the better camera.
Hey, Jorge.
Here.
Got it?
Joe,
Got it?
down.
Okay. All right, one more. All right.
All right.
My wife's a perfectionist. All right, great. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Hey, David Yoakum. I'm a big researcher in town. I called you a while back on the Ted Bundy visual timeline, but it was nice to meet you.
Yeah,
My name's Chris. Yeah, what'd
I
you
saw
think?
you on TV.
Oh, did okay, so, what'd you think of the show?
Oh, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
Like I told the producer, it's interesting to see the inside of it when you know, you
Yeah.
don't see the personalities the way he's portrayed them. So
Right. Well,
Entertaining.
excellent. Yeah.
Okay.
Have a good one, guys. Hey, Joe. Sorry, my name's Chris. I actually have Bob Hayward's widow over here.
Oh, you're kidding?
If you want to meet her,
Oh, yeah, I
she's.
heard she was coming.
Yeah. Let me take you over there. Excuse me. Oh, hey, Marion. This is Joe Berlinger right here.
How are you? Was it okay?
He's the director.
Oh, thank you.
It was quite accurate.
Oh, good. Oh, that's good to hear.
Yep.
Great.
Happy to see it.
Well, thank you for coming.
Oh, we really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Here, let me get a picture with you guys.
Okay. Can I have one?
I'll make sure to get a picture of you too. So.
Okay. Go over there then.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
What was that? Do you mind if I
Of course, of course.
Paula, you're in there too. Hey.
Great. Is there an email I can send it to? Do you email or anything?
Yes, I'll run it.
Pardon me? No. No.
Oh, thank you.
He's lucky. I'm a beautician.
Oh, you are? Okay.
He's lucky. He's a lucky one. He's lucky. He has a full head of hair.
How long ago did your husband pass away? Only a year and a half. I'm sorry. How are you doing with that?
What do you do? I'm sorry. Can I get?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Stay busy. Stay busy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she does.
And
Kids and grandkids. She's always on the roll. So.
and Pete was Bob's brother, the guy that actually was the captain of detectives.
Yeah, I had to condense,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
We greatly condensed all that stuff because...
Oh, you had to.
Oh, you have
because
to.
the original cut of the movie had much more of the Utah stuff. Like, I felt bad that, David Jocum's part was reduced to... We had a whole Utah section, but everyone who watched the film said the sooner you get to Miami, the better. So we had to crunch
Sure.
it down. So,
Sure.
It was really excellent. I really enjoyed it. I like the perspective. It's different than anything we've seen.
yeah.
It is. I've been watching. Is that your documentary then?
It is. It's kind of crazy I've done both at the
I've been
same
watching
time.
Hey, I actually like the Blair Witch Project Part 2, actually,
Oh,
so
good.
don't feel bad, man.
All right. Well, you're one of 5 people, so that's
Okay,
fine.
sweet. I've always been independent. All right, we'll let you go. Thanks, Joe.
Hey, Lauren, do you have my water?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for
All right.
coming back.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Be well.
Thank you.
All right.